There's a quote on the screen which we feel is quite pertinent to Year 11 students and also other year groups. And this quote resonates with us because it fits in with our motto, which is the tortoise and the hare, and the idea that the students who work steadily and consistently and put their best in at all times are the ones who have the greater success, where all of that work pays off. So we wanted to just give you a brief talk on this video where we go through some of the habits and things that will help our Year 11 students to be successful this year. And hopefully experience some of the happiness and joy of receiving results at the end of the year for which they feel they deserve and they worked for. You can see some pictures on there of previous students who have received results, and nothing really quite can be explained as to what that day feels like for those students, but we try to give the Year 11 students and the Year 10 students, where possible, some feeling of what that's like by doing some mock results day, just to give them the sense of what that day is like. But it's a day of really just celebrating all the hard work that they've put in. So to have a successful Year 11, among other things, we'll be talking about how you as parents can help, what the Year 11 student should be like to be as successful as they can be. We'll talk through some tips with revision. Some of these strategies won't be new. It'll be a recap really of things we've said in the past, but hopefully useful. And then just really talk about the year ahead and what to expect. So I wanted to start by saying, for those of you who perhaps have a Year 11 student for the first time, what would help, how can you help as a parent for the students to be successful this year? And the first thing is to say is that you've got to try to be a role model for them. It's very easy for you to be stressed by these exams as well as them. One strategy that parents might use is to say to students that, you know, the exams are going to be really hard and that's why they need to really work. But that can be counterproductive. So it can be also good to tell them that they've got it and have that kind of can-do positive attitude. So model that behavior, model the kind of we've got it, rather than it's hard and you need to work harder. Try to set goals for the students, help them with this. We do it from school, and you know, this is something the students should be familiar with, but it can be helpful to have some goals at home as well, and it could be based around homework and revision or revision timetable, even things like what they'll eat that week and what time they'll go to bed, how much screen time they'll have. So think about targets and goals that would help them at home to have good study habits and to be healthy with all of that as well. Think about talking to them about what their best and weakest subject is, what you can learn with them. Learning with them is a really effective thing if you have the time. I know from talking to students last year that a few of them recounted evenings where, you know, they were being tested on keywords in science, and that, you know, they were doing a bit better than one of their parents on learning those. It can be quite a fun bonding experience, and just getting them to see the bigger picture when they're doing this work and revision, and trying to take the focus away from the grade that they're aiming for, which of course is important, and we all have all the students will have a target grade, but actually the way to achieve a target grade and the way to achieve their best is for them to focus on the number of marks that they're going to get for any particular question. It's that technique that breeds the success, because as long as a student focuses on that kind of granular improvement, they will ultimately get the best grade that they can. The next thing to say is about keeping active. I think revision is often something that's quite a sedentary activity. So building in some activity in between homework and revision helps them to stay healthy, and also you know, will increase their brain activity as well. So that will be something that needs to be thought about. The other thing is about healthy eating, and as teenagers, you know, they can have some not so good eating habits. This could include what they're eating on the way into school or after school, thinking about their packed lunch as well, and certainly their evening meals, and also having snacks in between when they're studying for long periods of time. Sleep is really important, and I know that will be something that you are aware of, but students quite often will go to bed too late. They'll quite often be on social media or on their phones just before bed, and that is known to disrupt sleep patterns and obviously will keep them awake longer than they might otherwise be. And they've all got to be up in the morning and in school for the same time, regardless of how much sleep they've got. Teenagers should be getting 8 to 9 hours. If possible, good habits an hour before bed is getting away from screens, switching off the phone, doing a bit of reading if possible, and where you can role model that too, that would be fantastic. And the last thing to say is that they've got to have belief they can do this. It's been a tricky year, but all students in the country will be in the same position, so it's all relative. And as long as our students, your children, do all the things that have been asked of them and try their hardest, they won't be disadvantaged in that respect next year, because they are up against students who have been in exactly the same position as them. As in previous years, grades are rationed, and if there are the students who have done the more work and who've worked to the best of their ability are more likely to get the higher grades and the grades that they deserve. I'm going to hand you over to Miss Hales now, who's going to just talk to you about being that Year 11 student.
Hello, so I'm just about to talk you through what it takes to be a successful Year 11 student. So your child is now 2 terms away from sitting their GCSE examinations. And we know, and they know, and hopefully you know, that it's going to be an incredibly demanding year, but also an exciting and rewarding one too. A psychologist named Angela Duckworth wrote a book called Grit, which explains her many years of research into what makes people successful. And she discovered it's not talent, at least it's not just talent, it is grit, a combination of perseverance and passion. Grit is not about being instantly great at something, it is about hope, constant practice, and not giving up or getting distracted. And I suppose when kind of looking at that, I was thinking about different characteristics and different qualities that our Year 11 students need to embody to be successful this year. So it begins with being on time to school, good attendance, great punctuality, being equipped and ready to learn, going to bed 30 minutes earlier, and as Mr. Novak already said, having a good sleep pattern is really important. Taking time out from screens, stepping away from the laptops and the computers and phones. If possible, maybe getting the family on board with this as well, but revising 1 key word a day, just to slowly kind of embed that into their routine. Asking teachers for a model answer. So having that open and honest conversation with teachers, asking for support if needed, but also what does that grade 9 look like? What does a grade 7 look like? And being aware of that. Keep going over old topics. Even if they finish something in Year 10, they must go back and keep revising, keep covering key points. Hopefully with remote learning, they already have established a revision timetable. So using that, utilizing it, and staying on top of their studies is really important. Keep my promise to stay focused for the whole lesson. So it's so important that now the children are back in school, that they are engaged and ready to learn. Obviously, it's incredibly important they eat well. They always have breakfast to help them focus, and exercising, again, is crucial. And finally, for them to be successful, they must make use of the resources or the online resources that we use, those platforms such as Google Classroom and GCSE Pod, Seneca, Everlearner, a range of platforms that your child has access to, which I would highly encourage them to use on a regular basis. I'll hand back over to Mr. Novak.
So I'm going to talk to you a bit about revision next. And I want to start by saying that there are better revision techniques and there are worse revision techniques. There is no perfect revision technique, and it is a bit of a suck it and see situation for students. They'll need to test out different revision techniques and find what works best for them. But I will go through a few ideas, and I will tell you what the research shows is a more effective revision method. So there's a few things on here. I'm not going to go through all of this now, but the key thing is that the students need to get information from their short-term memory into their long-term memory. And to do that, they need to go back over things and they need to test themselves. And the first couple of things on there say practice testing and interval testing, testing every few weeks, and interleave testing. Basically, if you test yourself, you find out what you know and what you don't know. If you don't test yourself, you can easily move on to the next thing, revise the next thing, and not realize what you have actually not taken in from that. The other thing is, just because you've learned something, it doesn't mean you will remember it a week later. So it's so important to pick up things and go back over things. And actually by doing that, the recall will become embedded. You only need to do it a few times for it to transfer into your long-term memory, and then it will be remembered for a long time. So most students, even after talking to teachers and getting advice, will engage in passive revision. And passive revision is something that students like doing because it's a comfort zone. It's something that feels good because you can tick the box that you've done revision, you feel like you've achieved something, but actually it's a question of how useful has that revision been, how much have you actually taken in. What students will often do is take out their revision workbook or their notes or textbooks. They will read over the notes. They may make flashcards, they may make mind maps, they may organise that information in some way. And then they go into their test or exam and then hope that some of the knowledge that they've read or gone through has stuck and the right things come up that they've remembered in the exam. And now sometimes that may well happen, and there will be students for whom actually this is effective. But for a lot of students, this will not be sufficient and it's a bit of pot luck. So a far more effective technique is to do active revision, which starts off the same. So you may well have some notes that you start off with, but then you're doing something more active with those notes. So thinking about how you can create something that's memorable from those notes. But then the next phase is the really critical one, which is missing from the passive revision, and that is the test yourself. Because without testing yourself, you don't actually know before you go into a test or exam what you've retained from doing that revision. So having some exam practice questions that you have a go at, short or long, you only need to look at the question to realise very quickly whether you feel confident about answering that question. And that could be just that you're not sure about what the question's asking you, or it could be that you haven't retained the knowledge, or a combination of both. That will inform you then to go back to your notes on that particular thing and go over that, or indeed ask for help with the question if it's the question that's posing the problem itself. What we would then encourage students to do is to take the list of topics, the list of things that they've studied in any particular subject, and go through and rate the different things. So if they are confident on that thing after testing themselves, then it's green. If their knowledge is quite good, but they don't feel 100% confident, it will be amber. And if their knowledge is weak and they know they need to spend some more time on it, then it's red. They might want to try a different strategy going into it again. So if they've done a lot of revision, they feel like they've worked hard on it and they still rating it red, rather than feeling like they can't do it, it'd be worth trying to do a different method of revision and seeing if that works. Highlighting is a passive form of revision. It's not to say it doesn't have some use. It can be good for helping you to find key information quickly when you are revising. So it can be quite a useful thing to have in notes to draw you to key words or key phrases, things that you want to know. But what often happens with students is that they will highlight far too much and it defeats the purpose of doing it. A more effective method of revising is to condense the information. So if they're using a page in their book or their revision guide or textbook, what they should do is read through the information and then summarize the information or chunks of it. It might be paragraphs or subheadings on Post-its. And so these 2 pages would then look something like this. So if they went back in to revise that topic or that chapter in the book, they would just look at the notes that they've made, and hopefully those notes would trigger the rest of their knowledge. If they looked at those notes, let's say a month later, and they felt that they weren't sure what those notes were about, then they would go back into the depth and read it, but hopefully the notes would trigger that memory and be enough on their own. The other thing to say, which I think hopefully a lot of people are aware of, is a method which has been proven to be really successful, and certainly students from last year and the year before who have used this method have been really positive about it and its efficacy, and that's the Lightner Method. It's very simple. All you do with the Lightner Method is choose a topic for a particular subject. You make flashcards, so that would be, you know, the passive revision, possibly even as part of that condensing the information, which can be good. So you've got those flashcards. On one side of the flashcard, you've got the topic title and then the key information on the back. It could be keywords, so you've got the keyword on one side and on the back you've got the definition, and so you can test yourself both ways round on that. So you could read the definition and test yourself on the keyword and vice versa. You have those topic packs of flashcards together, or maybe have their own boxes, their own set of boxes, or subjects, their own set of boxes. All the flashcards start in the first box. You set aside how much time you can set aside to do it, let's say 20 minutes, and you test yourself on as many flashcards as you can in 20 minutes. If you get it wrong, you put it back in that first box. If you get it right, it moves on to the next box. And the idea is that that first box is one you do every single day until there are none left in it. The next box, you could choose the frequency. So it might be that you look at it twice a week, or a frequency that suits you. Obviously, the idea is that if you've got it correct on the first box, you do know the information. So now it's about the thing I talked about earlier, which is just coming back to that information, helping to embed it into your long-term memory. If you've looked at it again on the next box and you've got it right again, you can move it on to your final box, and that final box might be one you look at once a week or once a month. And essentially, you've probably got it by now. If you get it wrong, it goes back to the first box because you've forgotten it and you need to go over that more frequently. So the idea is, of course, over time, they move all towards the last box. And that's great because by the time you get them all in the last box, you're getting near to your exam, and you don't need to revise everything with as much frequency, which is obviously important because you've got a lot to revise leading up to those exams. This is only really successful if you start early. It's not something that students can do a week or two before exams. So it's really important to do this little and often and start as early as they can. And perhaps start with the subjects that they feel the least confident on, and it will really have a big impact on their revision. I'm going to hand back to Ms. Hales now just to talk about some things relating to exam boards.
Hello. A couple of key things from me, really. Make use of exam board websites. You should be aware of the exam board that each subject is using, but if you are not, then obviously reach out to the subject teacher and they will be able to share that with you. Have a look at the specifications that are posted online, and also you can look at the guidance that's been posted by the government and the changes that have been made to individual subjects moving forward. And a key thing really for your child is to go onto the exam board website and to have a look at past papers, and to practice answering the papers that have been posted online, and especially timed responses is key. To download a paper and to practice 50 minutes answering the questions, and then potentially hand that paper into their teacher for it to be looked at and some feedback to be given to them. It's key as well to remember that other people around the country will also be practicing. So it's so important that your child is kind of matching that. Best way to maximize your grade is to focus on raw marks available for each question. And it's also important to have an awareness of the grade boundaries. How many marks do they need to get to reach or achieve a certain grade? Make sure that your child is revising all of the components, and rather than just focusing on one in particular, what does the whole paper look like? And also there will be some exam practice booklets and questions supplied by teachers, and it's so important that they practice every one, because the more they practice, the more likely it is that a question like that will come up in the real exam. And also finally, checking answers against the marking criteria, which can all be found online. If not, teachers have student-friendly mark schemes which they can give to your child. So main thing really is know the exam board for each subject, have a look at the specification online and the different exam guidance that's been posted for the changes for each subject, and to use those practice papers, look at the mark scheme, and reach out to teachers for any support. And finally, from me, just again to signpost those key revision websites that we use regularly at St Richard Reynolds, and GCSE Pod in the middle there is a key platform that we use, and your child has access to this via the app on their phone, or they can log in from their computer. And again, that's already kind of linked up to the different exam boards that we use at St Richard Reynolds. Therefore, everything that's on there is perfect and links perfectly to what they study in class. BBC Bite Size is a great revision resource as well, everything on there. And also there are some exam questions available, Seneca Learning, Gojamo and Quizlet. So lots available, but obviously being in school, having that teacher learning is the most important, but using this as well will hopefully then increase your child's outcome at the end of it.
Okay, we're nearly done now. I usually share some key dates for the year at this point, just to kind of let people know what the rhythm of the year is going to be like. This year it comes with a bit of a health warning, in that some of this is a bit of guesswork, as in we don't have the final details. So I'll just cast your eyes right to the end on the top right. I've got in the expected date for when the GCSEs will begin. There is still some consultation out about this, and therefore it might change. It might be pushed later in the year, but at the moment, as far as we know, they'll take place at the usual time, beginning in May. I've got some key dates for parents in orange. So you can see down at the bottom, we've got the Parents' Evening, which you've had a bit of information about. That will be a virtual Parents' Evening event on the 14th of October. Shortly after that, you'll get a report home, which will hopefully follow up and confirm some of the information that you've discussed on the 14th. Students will do mock exams in November just in English and Maths. That's what's planned at the moment. The dates to be confirmed, just as we try and fit it around public exams that we'll be having to run this autumn. And then the results of the mock exams in January will be held at some point in January after those mock exams have been marked. So that's a key point then for students. So this year, the mock exams for Year 11 will be in January. We have in the past held them in December, and there are lots of good reasons for doing that. But this year, we feel that it's important to front load the content, and so that will give more teaching time this term. And it's a very important term. It's the longest term and the biggest chunk of teaching time that we'll have with the students this year. And this means that they'll also have the Christmas break. I call it a break, but hopefully there'll be some time in there to have a break, as well as prepare for exams in January. It will give them that time, rather than rolling straight into exams at the end of a long term. They'll have that time to rest and recuperate, and have time to revise properly for them, and be able to give them their best shot. We'll obviously be doing some follow-up on mock exams, and the feedback from that will be really important for them and you, back to kind of setting good targets for them for the spring term. And then we'll be looking to complete subject content around Easter. There'll be further mocks in English and Maths in Easter after February half term. It's probably worth pointing out that there are some changes to assessment and content for some subjects this year as a result of the impact of the last 6 months. And therefore, it might be a case of some subjects will finish their subject content earlier than they might normally, which will give a nice amount of time and some extra time before Easter to revise in a way that's gentler and more kind of tortoise, as we like to say. Easter holidays, the last big chunk of revision time and final preparation before those exams begin. But I mean, I think the key thing is for you and the students to be aware of when these key dates are. but for the students to just realise that there is lots of time to have a big impact on how successful they are this year. And the earlier they start, if they start soon, if they start now, they can be very, very successful this year. And I wanted to mention this as well at this point, even though we're still to iron out the detail. We want to hold a power hour after school and basically set up the expectation for students that they will be doing some sort of revision with or aided by teachers after school for an hour, or it may well be that they're doing practical work for some subjects. This is normal. This is something we've done in the past, but obviously this time around there may be a few more practical issues. So once we've kind of figured out exactly what it will look like, it will usually start around about October, sort of towards half term. And it might be that some of these sessions are from home. They may be live, they may be pre-recorded. We will let you know the details. It's usual that we expect some students to attend these sessions, and some of these sessions, depending on which subject it is, and we would let you know which ones that we'd expect them to be at. And of course, this is in addition to their normal commitment. So, 2 to 3 hours of homework a night, any other things that they do. I always say as well that once we get past Christmas, or perhaps even leading up to Christmas with the mocks, it is a time when students do need to think about what other commitments they've got and whether they just adjust their time so that they are giving enough time to this to be as successful as they can be. So we'll be in touch with more details about what this will look like over the next few weeks. So look out for that. Thank you. And I'll just leave you with this, and that is that students, like all of us, don't follow a linear path to success. It is something that there are, they find there are hurdles, and they will trip up and they will fail at times. But it's all of those experiences that will help them to be successful. And it's the resilience, and it's the perseverance, and it's the working steadily that leads them ultimately to the success that they will have. So thank you. Both Miss Helsen and I wish you and our Year 11s a great year and all the success that they deserve at the end of it. Thank you.
If that didn't record.